Hey everybody, I get a question regularly on this channel, and the most recent one is from Doug Kemp, which is, how do you answer, why should I hire you in a job interview? Let's dive into that question. We're going to talk about why recruiters and hiring managers ask this question, what they're probing for, what they're hoping to hear. We're going to talk about a great answer to this question. We're going to talk about what not to say, which could be a real red flag. And we're going to talk about what things you could say that are really going to help you stand out and have the recruiter drool over you as a highly desirable candidate. Okay, so let's dive in. First, I got to get some stuff out of the way first. And there's two things that you should never say in response to this question. Trust me on this. The first one is if they say, why should I hire you? You say, well, why would I want to work here? Okay, don't say that. I had a lot of people saying that in the comments. It is not going to do you any favors. Just that this sarcastic / arrogant response doesn't work. Also, if they ask you, why should I hire you? Don't say, well, I need to eat. Okay, I need a job, right? The question is not about you. They're not asking, why should I hire you? They're asking, why should I hire you? Okay, the question that they have before them is they have interviewed probably several people for this position, and they're wondering why they should choose you instead of any other candidate for the position. That's where this question is coming from, okay? That's what it means, okay? So let's be clear about that. Why should I hire you as opposed to any other candidate that's put themselves forward for this? Okay, now, where can we start here? Number one, this is a really great question to be asked. Okay, they're giving you almost like an open floor to sell yourself, to talk about yourself. Okay, this is a great thing. In fact, this is what you hope for when you go down to a job interview. Presumably, you've done a little bit of preparation before you go to the job interview, and you might have gotten it straight in your head exactly what you want to communicate to them. Okay, and that's actually going to frame our answer of how we're going to answer this question. It's a question of what did you come down to the interview to say? Okay, that's the big question. Presumably, you came to tell them that a lot of the things in the job description under the requirements section, when they say we're looking for somebody who has 5 years experience in this and this educational qualification and this skill and possibly these traits, right? If they've said that, presumably what you want to do in the job interview is communicate to them, well, look, I have 5 years experience in that, and I do have this educational qualification, and I do have that skill, and I have those traits. You want to communicate that to them, and they will think, oh, well, you are a perfect fit for this position then, right? That's one of the things you want to say in the job interview. And this question is a perfect avenue to say that. They say, why should I hire you? And you say, well, as I understand it, you're looking for somebody who has, and then you go down the requirements. 5 years experience in this. I have 5 years experience of that. I also have this educational qualification. And I understand you're looking for somebody who has these traits and these skills. And I have all of those, right? So that would be a great answer to the question, why should I hire you? Okay. Now, it doesn't stop there. There's a little more to this here, okay? The problem that everyone has to understand is that strengths are relative, okay? You go to a job interview, and you interview for a certain role. Let's say, I don't know, what job could you have? Let's say you go down and they're looking for a very detail-oriented person, okay? And you say, well, hey, I'm a very detail-oriented person. You regard it as a strength, and you assume that they will see it as a strength too, okay? And maybe it is for certain positions, to certain people. However, you go down to another job, maybe they're looking for a salesperson, and you say, oh, I'm a very detail-oriented person. You think it's a strength. You pride yourself on how you don't make mistakes and you really verify things. And you find out that they regard that as a considerable weakness because they have made the assumption that, oh, if you are a detail-oriented person, you're not really going to be a big picture type person, and you're not going to want to go out and get in front of customers and make sales. Okay? That's what they've decided. They weren't looking for a detail-oriented person. So if you tell them what you consider a strength, you run the risk, and sometimes it's a considerable risk, that they don't see it as a strength. They have a very narrow list of things that they consider strengths, and that wasn't on the list, okay? So strengths are relative, and when we guess at what the recruiter is going to find us a strength, then we run into problems, okay? So that's kind of the first thing that I want everyone to understand. Now, it's all very well to sort of answer this question by listing off things from the job description, from the requirements, and saying, I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this. That's great. The obvious question is, what if you don't meet all of the requirements? Okay? Great question. A lot of people have asked this, and Doug Kemp also asked this as sort of a secondary question. Here's the deal. In a lot of jobs, when they post it, if you're responding to a job posting, a couple of things here. Number one, they list a lot of requirements that aren't actually requirements. A requirement being something that you must have. It's a must have. It's a deal breaker if you don't have it. Okay. Usually what they list as requirements aren't actual requirements. They're nice to haves, right? So if you have that, great. If you don't have it, it might not be a showstopper if you can show that the lack of that thing is not going to lead to any issues. Okay. So for example, let's say they want 5 years experience in something. Okay. A certain role. Now, let's say you don't actually have 5 years experience. You have 2 years, okay? So you can say, look, I got 2 years in this, but I have 5 years experience in this other role that's very similar. Or I don't have experience in that, but I do have experience in this thing that's quite closely related to it. Or you could say something along the lines of, I only have 2 years experience, but in those 2 years, I have worked with people that have 20 years experience in the role. I've learned a lot from them, and it really didn't feel like I was the junior partner. We all felt like equals. I could handle any situation that they could handle. So I'm not really worried about the fact that I've only got 2 years. I'm pretty confident I can handle myself in this job. You know, something like that. Whatever puts the recruiter's mind at ease that it's not going to be an issue. Okay, these are important considerations. Some other aspects of this, questions I've gotten in the past, is if we're talking about, rattling down the list of requirements, how do you know the list of requirements? Do you memorize it? I'd say no. Bring the job listing to the interview. Okay, if you're having a face-to-face interview, print it on a piece of paper. Yeah, I know it's old school, but print it on a piece of paper, have it on the desk in front of you. And don't read it right off the paper, but just have it there as something you can glance at and you can jog your memory. So when you have to go down the requirements and speak to them, you can just sort of glance at the corner of your eye and say, yeah, I got that. I got this. And I understand you're looking for this too. And that, just like that, right? That's what I would recommend people do. There's nothing wrong with taking materials into the job interview with you, as long as you're not staring down at them the entire time. Make eye contact with the person that's interviewing you and keep the eye contact for most of the time, but it's occasionally good to look down and just glance at something. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's not distracting. So don't be afraid to bring materials in. If you have it on a phone, there can be other issues with that. So I would not necessarily recommend that you have it on your phone and have the phone in front of you, because there's a bunch of issues with having a phone on the table during a job interview. It can be a distraction. It can signal a bunch of negative things. But if you just have a couple of pieces of paper, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's what I'd recommend there. Now, the other thing that people have asked me about when it comes to answering this question, okay, is what if they've already asked you a question like, what are your strengths? Okay, so you've already sort of maybe done this. You've gone down the list of requirements and you've spoken to most of them. You've already done this. And then afterwards, they ask you this question: why should I hire you? Right? And you want to give the same answer again, but there's a little voice in your head that says, well, wait, I've already said that. I can't say that again. Here's how it works. You have permission to say something more than once in a job interview. If they ask you 2 questions in a row or 2 questions over the course of the interview that basically have the same answer, there's absolutely nothing wrong in giving essentially the same answer again. I would not repeat it verbatim, like word for word, but the substance of your answer, you can say it again. If they say, why do you think you're qualified for this role? Maybe you answer with the fact that, well, I have 10 years experience being in this role. So that's how I'm pretty confident I'm qualified to do it, right? And then they ask you again, well, what are your strengths? You could say, well, I'm a fully qualified, whatever the role is. I've been in this role for 10 years. I consider that a considerable strength. I know how to do this job, and I've seen pretty much almost every scenario you could imagine that you will encounter in this job. So I feel pretty confident I can do it. It essentially has the same answer, and it's okay to say it, right? Don't feel that you can't repeat yourself at all during a job interview. Also, the advantage is that, sometimes people don't always retain and register everything you say. There's a statistic out on that, isn't it like 50%, how you look, and 30% how you sound, and like 20%, whatever it is, what you say, whatever that statistic is, it's true. Okay. Sometimes people didn't register what you said the first time around. So to really make sure that they got it, you could say, no, I am a fully qualified person. I have 10 years experience in this exact role. And the second time you say it, they get it. They register. Maybe they were writing down your answers, on a piece of paper or something the first time you said it, and they were distracted and they didn't really register what you were saying. So this is a very important point, and you make sure that they get it, right? So don't think you can't repeat yourself. So that's perfectly fine. Just remember, okay, strengths are relative, and what you can say to really stand out is going to be an exact match with the requirements. When it comes to a recruiter, okay, as opposed to a hiring manager, recruiters are paid to find a candidate that has pretty much, line for line match with the job requirements. That's what they consider to be a good candidate. There are other things too, like, they make sure that you're a low risk candidate, that, you're motivated, that you're suited to this kind of work. You don't have any red flags in your past or in your personality or in your communication style that could be an issue. But basically, barring any red flags, they're looking for somebody that line by line satisfies all the requirements. Does that mean you have to meet all the requirements fully? No, but it means that you have the essentials, the absolute requirements, and then there are no other things that are going to suggest that there are any red flags about you. So just to sum up, if somebody asks you, why should I hire you? A great answer is to say, well, as I understand it, you're looking for someone who, and then you go down the list of requirements from the job description and speak to each one. Either you fully meet them, or you can speak to it. You have some kind of equivalent of it, or some reasoning that shows it's not going to be an issue. And that's a great answer. That gives the recruiter exactly what they're looking for, and it helps you stand out as a candidate that fits perfectly. So hopefully that makes sense. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. I'll see you on my next video. Take care.